Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum. Welcome to Script Slayers. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Steph. So today on Script Slayers, we are going to be reviewing and rewriting the 2024 horror sci-fi film Alien Romulus. It was written by Fede Alvarez and Rodo Sayaguis and directed by Fede Alvarez. And it's based on the Alien movie franchise, and it's set between the events that happened in the original Alien movie in 1979 and the sequel in 1986. So this was Fede Alvarez and Rodo Sayaguis, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but
she's not. Continue.
This is one of several movies they've done together as a writing duo. They worked together on Evil Dead in 2013, which was an addition to the original Evil Dead movies in early 1980s.
1981.
Yeah.
And then Evil Dead 2 was, I think, 84.
Yeah, and it was
and
like horror
Army
and
of
then
Darkness
horror comedy and and then the horror genre seems to be where these writers feel comfortable, and that's where all of their scripts have been. So in addition to Evil Dead 2013, they did Don't Breathe in 2016, Don't Breathe 2 in 2021, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 2022, which we had reviewed and rewritten for our previous episode.
Right, so we actually did that for our podcast.
Yeah.
And I think it's safe to say neither of us liked that movie very much.
Yep, so we're back again to look at another movie that these writers have done together. Now,
although I should add, we didn't know before filming this and doing a little bit of research that they had actually done any of these other movies.
Correct. And you liked Evil Dead in 2013.
That's an awesome movie. That is gory, gruesome as hell. It's great.
So they have some hits, they have some misses. We'll see where this one lands. So, Jeff, would you like to give us a little synopsis of this movie before we get into some of the issues we have with it and our rewrite?
I would love to, Steph. Love to. Set between Alien and Aliens, Romulus follows Rain, a young woman living on Jackson's Star, a Weyland-Yutani mining world. A dreary Weyland-Yutani mining world.
Very depressing, like Appalachian coal mines on steroids.
Yeah, if you lived in the coal mine.
Yeah.
She wants to leave, but the company keeps extending her contract. When a derelict ship enters the system, Rain and a few of her like-minded friends see an opportunity. They can salvage hibernation chambers from the ship and flee Jackson's Star. Unfortunately, this is a derelict ship for a reason. The xenomorph from Alien was recovered, and now the ship is overrun with our favorite space monsters. Well, at least my favorite space monsters. Hilarity ensues. The movie.
Hilarity?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they meant this to be a funny movie, but there's
ironic hilarity.
No,
there are some serious problems with this film. That it's a little bit of unintentionally funny moments.
And spoiler alert, obviously, if you haven't seen this movie, we will be going through it and rewriting it. So it will spoil the movie for you. There's multiple things that I have, like 3 things in particular that I found that needed work with this movie that hopefully we'll address in our rewrite. And then Jeff, I think you have some things as well.
Jeff does have things.
Jeff always has things to nitpick about movies. So I would say the first for me is a lack of character development. These are very flat, one-note characters. And other than Andy, the android, I didn't have much interest in these characters' plot lines and what was going to happen to them, which I should if it's for the protagonist, at least Rain. And I just didn't care that much about her because she was so thinly developed.
Right, and this is something we both keyed in on. And I think this is a central problem with this film. It's not the only one, but the central one really gets into the characterization and how very little work is done to develop these characters.
Very little, yeah.
Even less than you might expect in a science fiction survival horror film. And I think that's something we both wanted to fix. It's like, how do you take these base characters and do something interesting with them so as the audience, you actually care what happens?
Well, and to be clear, this is a plot-driven story. This is not a character-driven story.
Sure.
But even in plot-driven stories, you still need an interesting character to follow. And that you care about. You care about what happens to them as the plot progresses. And this one, I didn't really care about what happened to Rain because there wasn't enough there.
Right. There's very little there for her. There's and the rest of the cast, the rest of the supporting characters, they do not have characteristics.
Mm-mm.
They have either a job title like pilot for Navarro,
Right.
or a quirk like Bjorn, who just hates androids.
He's just angry
and is kind
and
of a
hates
jerk.
all androids, and it's just he's just a prick. His
Right.
character, basically, they gave him one instruction: be a prick. Yeah.
Now, a lot of films, especially when you're talking about supporting characters, you can have limited personalities. You don't need to have fully fleshed characters for everybody in your film, but you should have it for someone, which this film does not. And even those secondary characters should have at least a single thing that makes you connect with them. When we think about movies like even the original Alien, Sigourney Weaver's character is basically the protagonist. She has the most development done, but all the other characters have some development work done on them so that they're a little fleshed out. Even the ones who are killed off pretty quickly.
Yeah, I didn't even care about the pregnant one. You think that we would have gotten a little more sympathy with that character, but there wasn't enough background or development for us to care about her. Andy is the one that I cared about the most, and even that was pretty thin.
She spends 2/3 of the movie in a bunk bed. Right. She's like, they travel to the Romulus. Actually, the ship is the Renaissance.
Okay, so Jeff has a whole thing
My
about
first
this.
thing about the title.
It should be named Alien Renaissance.
Yeah, and I'll go into that in a second. Yeah. But so I think the big thing is, going back to her, it's like, yeah, she spends most of the movie in a bunk bed until she needs to go running off and get basically be menaced by the aliens and have to be rescued. All right, so what's the second thing you had going on?
So the second thing is just sort of lukewarm horror action. Like, I like to be scared in a horror movie. I at least like a good jump scare. And I wasn't that impressed with the horror. I didn't feel frightened in this movie.
Steph does like jump scares.
Too. That's why I watch horror movies. I enjoy that little rattle that I get.
I don't find jump scares to be scary. They're startling. It's cheap horror. So we're going to have a disagreement here about the value of different types of fright and horror.
Yeah, but there wasn't even
that,
taking jump scares out of it and say you don't have jump scares. There wasn't that same sense of fear and dread that I think is sort of an undercurrent of horror movies in that genre. I just didn't get that. And the action scenes, I wasn't that impressed. There was that zero gravity one, which was supposed to be like probably the best one in the film, but even then it was
okay.
It was a bit silly. The elevator part was okay, but I was underwhelmed by the horror and action. And in a sci-fi horror action movie, I should have been more impressed. My last thing is, so this is the first movie since Disney has taken over the franchise,
right?
And it felt Disney-fied. And I'm going to try to explain what I mean by Disney-fied. Like, it felt like they took a classic, like Disney's been doing. They're taking these like animated classics and they're basically regurgitating them as live action films, but they're not really adding too much of a new twist to them. It kind of felt like that they took the Alien franchise movies and Disney-fied them. They regurgitated them and made a new film, but didn't add any ideas or new developments. I mean, there was that hybrid, but that was about it. It just felt like paint by numbers, and that I had seen. There was an amalgamation of all the other films that I had already seen in the franchise. So
yeah,
that's the third issue I had with this film.
Okay.
So yeah, Jeff, what about you? We both agree on the characters,
right?
Yeah.
I found that the film is overplotted. There are a lot of things happening that require require a fair amount of exposition. We have a character Rook, who is a same model android as Ash from the movie Alien.
Ian Holm,
which is terrible.
Yeah.
It looks terrible, and it's mainly there just to dump exposition and to serve a little bit as a menace, but mostly a dump exposition. I found that, though, for a film that spent so little time of character development, it spends a lot more on putting in needless plot points, which, when this should be a nice streamlined action horror film.
Monsters in space.
I had a real problem with how this movie began and where the genesis of the alien is in this movie, because I think it betrays the first film and the evolution of Ripley as a character in the first movie and her eventual victory over the xenomorph that's wiped out her crew.
Because as a reminder, if we're looking at all the films in sequence chronologically, this would take place after the first film.
Correct.
Yeah,
so
and-
she's still floating around in the lifeboat, and they find the wreckage of Nostromo. And we'll get into the details in a second. That was borderline offensive with this movie to me, because it's such a strong character. And not just a strong character, Ripley is a iconic character in both genre fiction, but in movies in general, because of that kind of embodying the
female badass.
Well, the female
she was
badass,
one of the
right.
first strong female characters on screen, right? I mean, that we really can resonate with.
Yes. And I think in part it worked because she was a strong female character, but wasn't held out that she was a female character.
Right.
There are definitely female.
You could have put a man in that role too.
Right.
But, yeah.
Well, the thing is, like, there have been female action heroes, for example, especially if you look like in the earlier parts of the 70s, like all like the Pam Grier movies and that. But that also leverages very much that these are female heroes. Mm-hmm. Ripley comes across as just another member of the crew who happens to be a woman and who is extremely good at her job and a badass.
Yeah, and it wasn't about like the Lara Croft Tomb Raider, super sexy kind of. It wasn't anything about her body or the sex appeal. It was just she was a badass.
So I found that opening really kind of undercut all that. And finally, I found the ending for this extremely unsatisfying, primarily because I think there were two endings.
Well, can we talk about the opening? Why you felt it undercut it is because that was her hero's moment at the end of the first film, where she ejects the alien from the airlock and she kills it.
Right.
That's what we believe.
There are two problems with that. One is a dramatic issue. I think that if you have that character who's going through that kind of developmental arc in your story, and the culmination of her development is that she is going to kill this thing that's been menacing her, that's destroyed her crew, that has been trying to murder her the entire story, you pretty much show that she's wiped it out. And it's never in the other films indicated that she didn't. And suddenly you're like, no, she didn't do anything. She just blew it out of her ship.
Yeah,
and now
it's like floating around in space, still alive. So yeah.
So and there was also a in-world practical issue with that, which is it's been shown these creatures, while they are extremely dangerous, aren't invulnerable. I mean, in the movie Aliens, Hicks takes out one of them with a shotgun. Mm-hmm. These creatures are deadly, but they're
you have to be able to kill them somehow, or else. Yeah.
The one at the end of Alien is like literally in the engine nozzle of her shuttle when she turns the engines on. I would assume that would probably cook it and kill it.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of issues with that, but the big one is a dramatic problem, and I really think that would be the first place I would start to fix this movie. So, and like I said, and then. I guess I'll get back to the ending.
Because
you
didn't like the opening, you didn't like the ending.
Well, the ending, the problem was that there is a really good ending with a few tweaks about what's happened with the characters at the 98-minute mark, where they have defeated the xenomorphs on the ship. They've gotten away from Rook, who has been trying to, either kill them or manipulate them. They're off the ship. They can travel off to this new world that they're going to find, that they want to get to. They've taken some losses. They've paid a price for their victory, but they've won. And then you get a mini movie, a 22-minute film about the pregnant woman having... with the pregnant woman having injected herself pretty much randomly with some alien goop that turns her baby into a hybrid. And then we have to have that being hunted.
We don't exactly know why she injected. Like that's
one of the plot holes that I guess I'd mention. It doesn't really factor too much into our rewrite, but I will mention it here since you brought it. One of the things in this film that we keep in our rewrite is that the company is doing experimentation on alien DNA to see what they can do to use it to engineer other life forms, especially specifically humans. They want to do this with, but whatever. Rook. And Andy is like, okay, here's this goop that we found. It can regenerate people. It'll save if any of your people are injured, kind of thing.
Sort of like an elixir of life type deal.
So they rescue the pregnant woman. She has been taken by one of the xenomorphs and walled up, and she has yet to be impregnated with a face hugger. So she hasn't, she doesn't have an egg in her. They pull her out of that goopy resin wall, and they're saying she has some sort of injury on her neck, and they're like, "Oh, should we inject her or not?" And they decide not to, but she's unconscious. Later, though, when she's on the ship and she's still injured, and she regains, I guess she's trying to get on board the ship, and she has, for some reason, they gave her all of these vials, and she injects herself with one. The problem is, though, she's not conscious when they're saying what this stuff does.
Right. So why does she know that she should be able to inject herself?
Right. She takes a random vial of something. So
it's plotty.
It is, and then and like I said, and then basically you get a second ending, and it's not that good. And I think it undercuts what is a really tight 98-minute long movie.
So is there anything else that you really didn't like about this film that you want to fix in the rewrite?
No, I think those are the broad categories of what I want to work on.
Okay. Well, we're going to jump into our rewrite. So I'm going to kick us off, and I'll get us through the first act. We are going to streamline down the characters. So we are only going to have 4 characters. We felt that there were a few unnecessary characters. So we're going to keep Rain as our protagonist.
Right.
We're going to have Tyler still as the ex-boyfriend, and he is going to be both the pilot and machinist for the ship. And we're going to keep Kay, who is Tyler's sister, and we're going to have her be pregnant still, and we're going to keep Andy the android.
Well, I think we're going to have Kay, though, as the pilot.
Oh, you want Kay as the pilot? That's fine.
Well, and see, this is one of the things with the film that I thought we wanted to, or at least I know we wanted to fix, is that I like ensemble films where everybody has something to contribute.
Right. So Kay's the pilot, right? And then Tyler's the machinist. Yeah,
right.
I get that right. And then we have Andy as still the surrogate brother to Rain. So the opening, we're going to keep the opening the same, but we're going to fix the issue that Jeff had with the first film. And so instead, the alien's actually dead, and it's just a severed head that they retrieve. It's enough to still do this DNA experiment stuff that they end up doing on this ship.
But Ripley's victory is intact, which is the important thing. She
still killed the alien in the first movie, and they just find the severed head out in space and bring it back. So that's our opening. Really keeps the scene the same. It's just instead of the full alien alive, it's the severed head. So then cut to Jackson Star, this depressing mining planet where our characters live. And I thought that was beautifully shot. It felt like you were just, in this dark, depressing Appalachian coal mine type feel, but with some, technology added to it.
Right. The look of the movie is great. It really captures the kind of retro future industrial look of the first 3 movies in particular. And it does it beautifully.
The director and writer did a good job with it. And the film overall is beautifully shot.
The design team, the special effects, the set decorators, everything looks really good in this planet. So Jackson Star, it looks depressing as heck, which is important for our characters.
Right, because it has to be a motivating force to get off. So we're going to keep it the same motivation in the fact that Rain thinks her contract is up. And she no longer has to be a corporate slave, and that she's going to be able to get off world to go to an independent planet, Yavara, and be done with her depressing existence. But she finds out that her contract has been updated, and now basically doubles her years of servitude on the planet. So she's pissed. We have her as in a job where she basically is sort of middle management. Did you say?
So in the film, she's supposed to be some sort of agricultural technician.
Yeah.
So in our rewrite, she is a computer technician working in their flight control center for the system.
She's not bottom of the barrel working in the coal mines. She has a little bit more, prestige.
Well, also puts her in place though to find or to find the transponder signal.
We needed her to be able to have enough technical expertise and not be more that middle tier of what she does, so that she can have enough authority to look at ship transponders that are coming in. Because this is a mining world, so we have ships coming in and out.
Could be cargo ships coming in and out.
Yeah, exactly, for getting stuff from the mines.
And I just want to say that does fix a big issue with the movie.
Is how did they even figure this out to begin with, that the ship was up there?
Well, they do mention that. So one of the characters we cut is Navarro, and she is the ship's pilot. And she is also the first person to be impregnated with the xenomorphs, right? Mm-hmm. And the first one to die. unfortunately, her entire character is pilot. I mean, there's
And
no.
then she dies.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we remove her, but we still needed a reason for somehow they figured out the ship's coming in the system. Also, though, if this massive starship, this thing is supposed to be enormous,
It's
like
a
the size of a
giant
city,
space station. Yeah.
and it enters orbit of this planet, and no one seems to react to it. We don't hear like anything, even though our focus on a bunch of characters who are going there to steal cryo chambers. But there's no indication that anyone on the planet even knows this thing is there. And it's like, well, wait, this is an active mining world. Shouldn't there be some space control system or something?
Right. So basically what we do is she sees this ship first and she gets the transponder and then she deletes it from the log. So that way it's kind of kept off the grid. And she has this idea. She knows enough about the information based on what the transponder has that there are lifeboats on board this ship that can take them into hyperspace and get her to Yavara, her oasis planet that she's trying to get to have a better life. And so she is pissed off at her contract being extended. So she recruits her ex-boyfriend Tyler, and they broke up because she was about to leave planet because of her contract, and he was still stuck in contract for, I don't know, 5 years or something. So now she has to go back to him and tell him what happened. So we have some, tension there between those characters, and you can build up that a little bit more.
Well, and it does. It creates some interesting dynamics within the group because in the story we get, there aren't really tensions in the group. The only ones you really get some
Andy.
between Bjorn, another character we cut, and Andy, because he hates androids, because a decision by one of them led to his mom's dying, right? His mother being killed by being left in the mine. So he hates all androids. But that's kind of it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of tension between characters because they're focused on the monsters.
Because it's not even clear, because we do know that Rain and Tyler had a relationship. They literally state that.
Yeah, but there's nothing else to do with that.
I don't know why it never even gets into why they no longer have one. Yeah. They just don't.
So that explains why they no longer have one. It adds a little tension, and she needs him because she knows he's a really good ship mechanic, and they need a ship mechanic to. And he brings, and she knows his sister's a pilot, and they need a pilot. So she asks, can you come help me with this, and as well as your sister, and we can get off world together. And I think she kind of uses it as maybe we can get back together and get off world kind of deal.
Well, the other thing too is we wanted to keep the sister pregnant. So Kay is pregnant
because that's important to how we do the rewrite.
But that also is a good motivation for them actually taking the risk to go into orbit to this derelict ship to shoot themselves between stars, hoping to get to another planet.
She wants a better life for her baby. We have it that the baby's daddy got killed in a coal mine accident.
Right. So we know how terrible this planet is. Yeah. We spent enough time in the first act to really build up how wretched things are. Mm-hmm. With Rain, we see someone who has been raised in this environment. She's never been off world. That's something we keep from the movie.
Yeah.
So we know that this is not a nice place to live, let alone raise a kid.
And we spend enough time building up the characters so that you're invested in what's happening to these 4 characters. And that fixes one of the issues that we had was thin character development, where we don't even spend enough time with them on the planet to really, care about them as they go onto the ship and get off planet.
Right. It gives solid motivation for why each of them is willing to do this. Yeah. We already know that Rain wants to get off world because that's literally how this opens up, with her trying to get off world. And she is depressed that she's stuck here potentially indefinitely as basically a indentured worker or slave.
Yeah.
We will know that, will know that Kay doesn't want to raise her child here. And then with Tyler, it can be either it's connections to the 2 women, because obviously the idea of going with his sister.
He's going to be an uncle, and also it sounds like there's still, we're going to play it up, there's still feelings there. And he also wants to get off this planet.
Well, I think that's the other thing too, is I'd like to see, we talked about, see the opening of the film, we see a little bit of Rain's life, right? We see basically a normal day in her life, and then she's recruited by her friends because of Andy, who can access the Weyland-Yutani systems on this derelict. I would like to actually spend a little time with each of these characters So we get the opening sequence right with Rain, but then see a little bit of what Kay, what's it like for Kay and Tyler.
And
so
we
like,
have it, and it's emotional for Kay because she, this accident, this tragic accident where her partner was killed in the mines. Like she wasn't planning on that, so she's like in grief about that and has this baby. And then
I was gonna say like a good scene with her would be like at the mining colony's medical center, like doing like a checkup on the baby. And then, overhearing maybe some of the nurses saying, oh, we have like some infants who already have this like lung disease. They make it clear there's some sort of weird
like
fungal
black lung
thing,
type deal. Lung. I mean, they even go so far as to have like the canary in the cage.
Right. So
like, that's a nice touch. But
with each of these characters, you can have like basically a sequence deepening deepening the world building for what this colony is like, but also then showing why each of these characters, why their lives are so bad, they're willing to risk all this.
So we're going to spend more time in that first act, like that second ending 22 minutes. We're taking that back and we're putting it into the first act so that we have a little more time to let these characters breathe and become like fully fledged humans before we then take them up to the ship to get things moving with the aliens. So I'll let Jeff take.
Well, I was going to say, I want to point out too, is that, so people listening to this or watching this might say, oh, well, that could be kind of boring. The movie doesn't get to the face huggers to any action until 40 minutes into it anyway. So they spend 40 minutes basically fiddling around doing very little.
Right. We're going to get to the action, but and I don't think it's boring if you do a good job with the tension between characters and you just raise the stakes of why these folks care about getting off world. They each have an investment in making a better life for themselves on another planet. So, okay, Jeff's going to take us through what happens once we get on the ship. So uneventful, we get up to the ship, like that part goes fine. And she gets to see the sun for the first time. I did like that moment in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because the way they set up the planet, it's like you can't ever see the sun. And so she gets to experience it for the first time. It's a nice touch.
That was a really cool scene. So they get on board the ship. I'm going to keep on. It's the Romulus. Fine. I have a problem with that even, but I think I'll leave my rewrite of the title for the end of this.
Okay.
All right. So they get to the ship and they're able to access it. Now, one big difference that we have, and there's a plot reason for this, is that in the film, the ship they're on is capable of interstellar flight. They just need more cryo couches or cryo chambers so they can all survive the 9 years it's going to take to get to the next system.
Yeah, like they're trying to get the cryo fuel. Basically.
Right. So in ours, the ship it's just a suborbital shuttle, right? So they're not able, it can't go between star systems, which I think makes more sense in this little ship being able to go into hyperspace. But because they know there is a ship that's hyperspace capable on the Romulus, once they dock, and of course, the only dock they can get to is on the opposite side.
Right. And then they have to go through this entire ship of horrors to get to the lifeboat that has hyperspace that can get into Yvara.
Yeah. So they dock, but this explains how they all leave the ship, because the movie we get breaks up the cast almost immediately into two parties. Mm-hmm. And I found that didn't add anything to the story.
It's unnecessary. I mean, it's a classic thing in horror movies to break groups up. But in this one, we only have 4 key characters. We can keep them together.
So they're all heading in. So Andy is able to get them on board. That's fine. And then we meet the first threat. And the first threat is not a group of xenomorphs or space huggers. It's security robots. So they're attacked by a handful of these.
They're protecting Raylan Corporation.
Right.
The science lab.
But they don't know. But our cast doesn't know what's happening. All they know is that they're on there and these robots are attacking, and they see maybe some bodies of other people who've been killed and stuff. So they don't know what happened, but clearly something violent. So they need to stop these robots. But these people don't have arms or no guns. I mean, they're coming from this mining colony. No one's armed. So they have Andy plug into the mother, to the ship's artificial intelligence, and basically get it to shut the robots down. He finds that the AI is damaged, but is still carrying out its final directives, which is basically the final directives are protect Weyland-Yutani and stop any secrets that, the stuff they're working on from getting off the ship. The
secret experiments on alien DNA from getting out. And that was one thing I thought the movie actually did well, was the Andy character and how he was, we never up until the end, we weren't quite sure his motives and whether or not he was going to turn bad robot on you or not. So I think we're keeping with that motif. We're not using the chip. We're not inserting the chip like the movie did. We're plugging him into the motherboard.
Well, the big difference is that, so we don't have the Rook character. We don't have the other android that then a copy of his chip or something is put into Andy. It's actually, even though the action is really straightforward, how it works is a little confusing because it's not like Rook's character's personality is transferred to Andy, but somehow taking out like this security chip changes Andy back into a Weyland-Yutani robot. I don't know. It was a little confusing.
Yeah, so we're basically just gonna, it's sort of a Jekyll and Hyde, right?
Right.
We're never gonna quite know as we're going through it, is Andy on the good side or not, because his programming has been
corrupted.
Yeah.
So the idea though is, right, to create a character that you're uncertain of, who has divided loyalties.
But he's in the group.
Well, it lends us some extra drama. Mm-hmm. It definitely allows for some plotty stuff. Mm-hmm. It allows potentially for some exposition to like explain what's going on. With like you, I liked what they did with that character. I like that, the initial character is sort of, fairly innocent almost, you'd say. He tells lots of dad jokes and things like that. It's kind of endearing. Once he gets his upgrade, clearly like the actor does a nice job of like changing his mannerisms so that he becomes like a little more stoic, a little more, professional or polished.
Yeah, that was definitely like the scene stealer. Yeah. Is that actor? Yeah.
So in this, we keep some of that idea that, okay, he is now a potential threat, but also is helping out. And it's not clear to the audience what it is he's doing. Mm-hmm. So the ship is still going to hit the rings. I guess I should mention that. So in the Romulus is on a collision course with a series of ice rings.
Yeah, rings around Jackson Star. Yeah.
And it's going to destroy the ship. And that provides the first ticking clock. I would keep that there. I like movies like this, having a propelling event like that, I think is fine. It's tropey, but it works because then it keeps the action moving. Sure. So they're still going to hit the ring. So Mother, the system wants to make certain that these people don't get off. She has Andy take them to the one of the science labs. Now we are keeping this idea that, as I said, that the Weyland-Yutani is working on a way to use alien DNA to modify other life forms. Mm-hmm. So we then change one of the kind of iconic creatures.
The face hugger. One of the things we wanted to do with this movie in our rewrite is we wanted to have some new alien creatures.
Right.
Because, we've seen face huggers now throughout, 6 other movies. So instead of having the traditional face hugger, we have a modified version of it that they've been experimenting with and created, which we call like a stinger.
Right, but basically it's like a cross between a face hugger and a scorpion.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that serves two things. First, it is to kind of introduce an interesting new creepy monster, while still retaining that kind of that weird arachnophobic feel towards these monsters.
Yeah, and so it can like stick to you and sting you deeply.
Right, and that's how it is. That's basically how it injects you with this alien DNA. So we're changing a little bit of the life cycle here, but that actually fits into where our plot goes. So the face hugger in all the other films implants an egg, which then, harvests part of your DNA.
Yeah, it does that like phallic-like thing down the throat, and it implants the eggs, and then, alien pops out.
In this, that's not what happens. What it does is it's injecting a kind of like the black goo from Prometheus and Covenant. And it starts basically rewriting your genetic code.
Which, if you're interested in other alien movies, we did do rewrites of those that you found in the Script Slayers podcast. We'll link that.
I'll actually link those in our description here. He lets these out. Now, the reason why is that Mother wants them to either distract or kill the other humans on board so they don't escape the ship.
Because she wants to protect
Weyland-Yutani secrets.
Yeah.
So this is where we get some of our action sequences, right? So we have these little monsters running around and our characters trying to escape them. And this is also then where we get to have our first kind of character casualty, but also the final boss battle really starts here, which is where one of the Stingers, unfortunately, injects Kay.
Right, who's pregnant, and so now we have her baby and alien DNA getting mixed in there, and I should say babies.
Babies, exactly. We're gonna have twins.
Nobody's had twins pop out before, so we thought that would be an interesting twist. Yeah.
So then
not the regular aliens.
Right. So then we have like a really the birthing sequence in Romulus is pretty gruesome. Basically, like pops out a pod. But I think I just would like it even just super graphic, just like these two creatures tearing their way out of her.
Yeah,
like really
she dies in childbirth as a result of birthing these like alien human hybrid monsters.
Right.
And it's the film did that. They had this hybrid monster, so we want to keep with that. We're just creating two of them.
Right. And there's one thing I read of Alvarez. He wanted the design of the hybrid in the movie to kind of connect up with and echo the look of the engineers.
From Prometheus, yeah.
Right. So, we didn't really land on a design, and actually that's not really the point of the rewrites here, but I don't mind that as like kind of a guiding principle for the kind of creature, like show its connection. Both. I
was okay with the design we got on screen. I mean, I know some people can be really picky about stuff, but I was fine with it.
Okay, so we have these two monsters. So Kay's dead. Andy is unreliable.
And then Tyler, the ex-boyfriend, is still kicking.
So at that point, what we would do is split characters up. So we have Tyler and Rain running off in one direction, and Andy is separated from them, and he encounters the hybrids. And this is where, and they don't attack him because they don't see him as a threat because he's not alive.
He's not human, yeah.
So that maybe they're interested, like curious about him. We get some creepy sequences, like with the monster in the movie, the hybrid in the movie had this kind of neat tongue with like a little starfish thing at the end. That was kind of cool. I could see like doing the sequence with like them probing him and shit like that. Just really gruesome stuff.
And it's similar to kind of how David and Prometheus and Covenant interacted.
Right, and that's what I could see doing is that this is where we get maybe our creepy exposition dump. Like what's the point of all this? What are these creatures? What's Weyland Yutani trying to do? You can have that moment that you get where in most of these films, the android waxes eloquently about the perfection of the aliens.
And you can see sort of the Jekyll Hyde between Andy's two personalities, the one that has been, corrupted in him because of the mother, and his original personality with the dad jokes and protecting Rain. So I think it'd be nice to kind of see both sides as he's battling that angel and demon within him. Basically.
Right, and I could see doing this thing where you had this kind of really, like I said, the kind of the stereotypical, they're the perfect creatures and super, but at the end of that little soliloquy, kind of see like doubt creep across his face.
Exactly, and that actor, David Johnson,
he's awesome.
He did such a great job. Yeah. I don't know, I don't think I've seen him in anything else before, but I was so impressed with him on screen. Like, I think he could pull off a soliloquy of that kind of angel demon thing.
Right. I think that would really work with him. And then we'd have the characters trying to reunite before they get off the ship. I think I would have a sequence where Tyler would show like some of his engineering chops and like make some sort of makeshift weapon, like the flamethrowers that they bashed together in the first movie.
And that gets at that whole machinist sort of.
Well, give him something, right? Like a thing. He's like, okay, we need weapons. I'm going to make you a cattle prod. Go with the weapons that the Brett and Parker put together in the first movie, the flamethrower and the cattle prod.
Taser, something like that. Yeah.
But we do want to kill Tyler off too.
Yes.
So we need to have that kind of beginning of the third act, end of the second act, beginning of the third act sacrifice sort of thing. So he's like, wants some payback. He's a bit of a hothead, and he's his sister just was shredded.
He's traumatized about. He thought he was going to be an uncle and his sister, and they were very close.
And I think then this is where we probably have the three characters having reunited, and he's just like, "Go! I'm going to take care of these things." And she can be like, "You're nuts," or "Come with me," or whatever. Even like I ended things because I thought we weren't going to be together. it's not because I stopped having feelings for you, something like that. But he's just like, I saw my sister killed. I'm not going to let these things get away.
Yeah, so he basically he ends up killing one of the twins, but dies in the process.
Right.
And so now it's just her and David, who we still are kind of suspect of. Right?
You mean Andy?
I mean, yes, Andy. Sorry, I'm getting my David's.
Oh, that's okay.
The other bad robot.
Look at
Andy the android. Yes.
Look, look at Michael Fassbender. It's just such a good job. He should be all androids.
Right.
I
agree. He just carries into movies that he's not even in.
But anyway.
But yes, Andy. Yeah. So we're back. Andy's back now, and we're just a little uncertain. But she doesn't really have anyone to trust. And I think there's this nice moment we should have between them, in a break from the action, because we can't have all action, where she's like, "You're still in there," and he like tells a dad joke and stuff, and she feels like he's back, but she's uncertain, and she's just like, "I know you're still."
I think that, and then have him do a heroic sacrifice.
Yeah, so that's kind of how we're going to end things.
I think
so both Tyler and Andy kind of do heroic sacrifices, but Andy's Tyler's more from a place of anger,
right? He wants
more
revenge,
self-motivated, and Andy's more like, I actually care about my surrogate sister.
Right? He's running off to basically either for vengeance or suicide by alien.
Yeah.
Andy's thing is definitely out of love for Rain.
Yeah.
Or what passes for
as much as a robot could love.
Well, and I don't have a problem with that. I mean, and I think the way to do this too is, he should make some comment, especially after maybe seeing, after meeting the aliens and then having the whole, the whole thing about, these are the perfect creatures, walks off, and sees through the rest of the third act how these two are struggling to stay alive and really fighting. Have a moment where it's like, these are the perfect organisms, but the universe doesn't reward perfection. Or something like that, kind of a thing where he acknowledges these things are super powerful, but he sees humanity as having more value than just some super predator.
Right, and also that he can go back to his original directive and original scripts that he was written to have, which was to protect Rain.
And so she gets on board the shuttle, launches the shuttle. The last scene we see of Andy is him fighting this creature as the ship plows into the rings and blows up.
Right, you gotta have that epic ending, and then you have Rain on her lifeboat, and she does that, I'm the last survivor.
Right.
The ship Romulus or whatever. It's kind of a nod to the other movies, but it's a nice touch. And then she heads off to planet Yavara to make a better life for herself.
Assuming this non-pilot is able to get the navigational coordinates correct.
Okay.
We're not going to find
that. So that we can have her hero moment at the end. She is the protagonist, and like Ripley, we want her to survive.
Now, there is something we did go back and forth on, is whether we should have had her kill one of the hybrids. But I like this idea that first it gives these other characters moments to do sacrifices for different reasons. One, as you said, really very selfish, and one very selfless. I also, I don't think we necessarily, her victory is not killing these monsters. Her victory is getting out of the system.
Her victory is survival. Right. And you don't always have to have an alien movie with the female hero killing an alien. That's also, we're just doing a little, she's not Ripley. We didn't want to make, and that gets at, my concern about it feeling very just sort of cookie cutter or Disney-fied of the other movies. She is a different person than Ripley. She's not Ripley 2.0.
Well, I think that kind of survival as victory is also in keeping with really the feel of the franchise, which is of a very dark and dangerous universe.
Yeah.
And I think that just would work really well. And I agree. The voiceover at the end, the little monologue, it really worked in the first film. It was really good, and I think it really will work with this.
Yeah, too. And it's that nod to the first film.
Now, I do want to talk briefly about the title.
Okay, yes, because Jeff had a whole issue with Romulus being the title.
Okay, so the ship is actually the Renaissance, or the station is the Renaissance, and it's two components.
Two chambers, the Romulus and the Remus. Yeah.
I think that is a nod to the video game Alien Isolation, which takes place on the space station Sevastopol, but each segment has its own name. The problem I had, though, is that I'm not sure exactly why they went with Romulus as opposed to a Renaissance. This is sort of a soft reboot of the series.
So Alien Renaissance just has
Makes a lot of sense.
feel to it. But,
Or if you're going to go Romulus and Remus and call the station the Looper Call, which is like the cave where Romulus and Remus were raised by the she-wolf. It was weird, and I didn't really like it, but I really think Alien Renaissance, I actually think works. It really says, like, we're resetting this whole series. We're getting back to its roots, which is not this weird. Well,
and we don't normally rewrite titles, but
we normally don't. But I think that was one thing that would be really fun about this, and it also kind of I think kind of fixes a little issue that I had, just like the point of the movie. And it's like Covenant and Prometheus weren't terrible movies, but they didn't really feel like alien films. They were like getting into like religion and the origin of species.
It has a lot more like the mythology of it, and where did humans come from, which I like, but not everybody liked those two films in the franchise.
And we are going to be rating all these movies in a second. Yeah. So, this is actually Alien Renaissance, not Alien Romulus. There you go.
So, Jeff, is this movie a watch or don't watch for you at the end of the day?
It was good. I really enjoyed it. It looks great. The acting, what there is fine. Andy, that actor, puts in a great performance.
David Johnson, yeah.
The woman who plays Rain is okay. I just don't think she has a lot to work with. The sets all look beautiful. Most of the action scenes are okay. I did have some issues, I don't mind saying, with some of the, how can I put it, some of the dumber science-y things or technical decisions, which I'm not going to get into that kind of nitpicking, but there were moments I'm like, well, that didn't make sense in context of this universe. But overall, I found it an entertaining film, much more than the last two movies in this series. So.
Kaylee Spaney, that's her name.
Kaylee Spaney.
That's the woman that played Rain.
I thought she was fine. I thought she did a good job. It was just that her part's underwritten.
Right.
And I don't blame her on that. I don't blame her for that.
But it's a watch for me as well. It's not my favorite in the franchise. It does have plot issues, which we rewrote. But it's beautifully shot. There's some cool like monsters, right? Especially like the hybrid alien human. There's some fun action scenes. Nothing horrific, but there's some fun action scenes in it. So overall, it's a wash, but not a best in the series. How would you rank order Alien Romulus or Renaissance in the franchise in terms of like best to worst films? Where would you put this one in the sequence?
Okay, so I pretty much found prior to this the movies were enjoyable and engaging in the release order. So Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, Prometheus, Covenant. So
Alien, the original, is your favorite?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So basically, you can literally just go down the list of how they're released as to what I thought about them as films and how entertaining they were. I would put this on the same level as Alien 3.
Okay, so it's not as bad. It's not under Covenant then. It's a little bit higher up.
Oh yeah, I think Covenant is the worst of the films.
Okay. No.
And Prometheus is pretty close. So there is for me a fairly large gap between Resurrection and Prometheus. So like those first four movies and now this movie are kind of up here, and the other two are kind of down here. I did not like those movies that much.
See, I liked them more than you. So I would put those higher, but where I would stick Romulus is second from the bottom. I would put Alien 4.
So Resurrection
at the very bottom. And then I would put this one right before that.
Okay.
So, but I would say my favorite of the Alien movies is Alien 2.
Okay, so Alien.
Then followed by the original Alien. Okay. And then I like Prometheus and Covenant. So I think fans are divided about whether they like Prometheus and Covenant. But
it's interesting to say about Aliens and Alien, because earlier we were talking a little bit, and then we'll be going. Mm-hmm. But we were talking a little bit about the action horror aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alien is not an action movie. There's very little action in Alien.
It's more horror.
It's straight up horror. It's these people searching for this monster in basically the basement. Their whole ship, the basement, right? There are a few action-y sequences, but it's mostly just these people getting cornered and wiped up by the alien. The closest thing to action is the end where Ripley is running through the ship after setting the self-destruct.
The airlock. Yeah.
Well,
scene.
Oh, where she blows out the airlock?
Yeah.
Even there's not really much action. She like straps herself into a chair, sees the thing coming after her, shoots it, and blows out the airlock. Aliens, though, is an action movie.
Yeah,
That's action sci-fi.
Yeah,
and so that, and I
with
think,
Newt.
well, I'd say the movies kind of after Aliens kind of went in that direction. They are much more actiony. Every film has to have its big set piece action sequences. Anyway, though, yeah, so check it out.
It's a
not
watch
bad
for both of us, even with its flaws. And yeah, thanks for tuning in to our reboot or renaissance of Script Slayers, which we will now be doing on YouTube.
Okay, bye.